In a faraway part of the galaxy, humanity stood on the edge of judgment. A group of representatives from Earth had traveled to the heart of the Galactic Council's Grand Assembly Hall. Among them were Daniel, a calm but determined man with sharp eyes, and Claire, a woman whose quiet strength masked her deep worry. They had come to plead for one last chance after years of ignoring warnings about their reckless behavior. The council chamber was vast, its walls shimmering with light that seemed alive. Beings of all shapes and sizes sat in silence, watching the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to disdain. At the center of it all was Zoreth, an ancient leader whose voice carried the weight of countless centuries. His presence alone made Daniel and Claire feel small, like children called before a stern teacher. Zoreth began to speak, his tone heavy with disappointment. "For decades we have watched you grow," he said, his words echoing through the chamber. "We offered guidance, shared knowledge, and extended our hand in friendship, yet you chose to ignore us. You polluted your own planet, drained its resources, and now seek to spread your chaos across the stars." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have broken laws meant to protect not just this galaxy, but all life within it." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "We admit our mistakes," he said, "but we are learning. We want to do better. Please, give us another chance to prove ourselves." Claire added softly, "Our people are capable of great things when given the opportunity. We can change. We will change." The council members exchanged glances, some nodding thoughtfully while others looked skeptical. Zoreth leaned back in his seat, studying the two humans before him. There was something genuine in their plea, but also desperation, a sign that they might already be too late. As the council began their private discussion, Daniel turned to Claire. "Do you think they'll listen?" he asked quietly. Claire sighed, shaking her head. "I don't know. But even if they don't, we have to try. For everyone back home." Back on Earth, news of the meeting spread quickly. People gathered around screens in homes, streets, and public squares, hoping for good news. Instead, they saw images of the council's cold faces and heard whispers of humanity's failures. Some grew angry, blaming their leaders for putting them in this position. Others felt fear, wondering what punishment awaited them. Amidst the chaos, two scientists worked tirelessly in a hidden lab beneath the ruins of an old city. Rachel, a brilliant physicist with messy hair and tired eyes, typed furiously at her computer. Beside her, Ethan, an engineer known for his practical solutions, adjusted wires and circuits. Together, they were working on a risky plan, a way to escape this galaxy entirely. "We're running out of time," Rachel muttered, glancing at the clock on the wall. "If the council decides against us, we won't get another shot." Ethan nodded, tightening a bolt. "Then we'd better make sure this works." Their project involved creating a rift in space-time, a doorway to another galaxy far beyond the council's reach. It was dangerous, untested, and required more energy than Earth could easily spare. But Rachel and Ethan believed it was humanity's only hope. Outside the lab, protests erupted as tensions boiled over. Some argued that fleeing was cowardly, while others insisted survival was worth any risk. The divide among the people grew wider with each passing day. Meanwhile, Daniel and Claire waited anxiously for the council's decision. They knew the stakes were high, but they couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what happened, humanity's future would never be the same. The council's decision came sooner than anyone expected. Zoreth rose from his seat, his towering figure casting a shadow over the assembly hall. The room fell silent as every eye turned to him. His voice rang out, firm and unyielding. "After much deliberation, the Galactic Council has reached its verdict. Humanity's actions have proven reckless and self-destructive. You will no longer be permitted to expand into the galaxy. Your ships are grounded, your colonies quarantined, and your access to hyperspace travel revoked." Daniel felt his heart sink. He clenched his fists, trying to stay composed, but Claire could see the frustration building in his eyes. "What about our people?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What happens to Earth? We're already struggling to survive." Zorath's expression softened, but only for a moment. "Your fate is now your own. Fix what you have broken. Learn to live within your means. Perhaps then, in time, we may reconsider." With that, he turned away, signaling the end of the meeting. Back on Earth, the news hit like a storm. Screens flickered with images of the Council's announcement, and streets filled with angry crowds. Some shouted curses at their leaders, blaming them for failing to prevent this outcome. Others held signs demanding rebellion against the Council's decision. In homes, families gathered around radios and televisions, listening to experts debate whether humanity could survive under such restrictions. Rachel and Ethan watched the chaos unfold from their underground lab. They had anticipated the Council's ruling, but hadn't expected it to feel so final. Rachel leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "We can't fix Earth in time," she said bitterly. "Even if we tried, it would take decades, maybe centuries. By then, we'll be too far gone." Ethan nodded, pacing the room. "That's why we need to finish the rift. If we can't stay here, we'll leave. Find a new galaxy where we can start over." Their plan was risky, but it was the only option left. The experimental technology they were developing could create a tear in space-time, opening a gateway to another galaxy. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was better than waiting for Earth to collapse under the weight of its own mistakes. To power the rift, they needed energy, more than Earth could easily provide. Rachel suggested scavenging old satellites, derelict space stations, and even pieces of alien technology left behind during earlier encounters. "It's all we've got," she said. "If we don't use it, we'll lose everything anyway." Ethan agreed, but he knew the task wouldn't be easy. "We'll need help," he said. "Not just materials, but people who believe in this enough to risk everything." They began reaching out to trusted allies, scientists, engineers, and visionaries who understood the stakes. Slowly, a small team formed around them. Among them was Lily, a young pilot with a fearless spirit and a knack for getting things done. She became an essential part of the project, flying dangerous missions to retrieve components from abandoned ships floating in orbit. As work progressed, tensions on Earth continued to rise. Marcus, a charismatic politician with a knack for stirring emotions, emerged as a vocal critic of Rachel and Ethan's plan. He argued that fleeing was cowardly and that humanity should stay and fight for forgiveness. His speeches drew large crowds, and soon, divisions deepened between those who wanted to stay and those who believed leaving was the only way to survive. Despite the growing opposition, Rachel and Ethan pressed on. They knew time was running out. The Council's envoys were already preparing to enforce their decision, and once they arrived, it would be too late. Every day brought new challenges, equipment failures, shortages of critical parts, and the constant fear of discovery. One evening, as the team worked late into the night, Rachel looked up from her computer screen. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" she asked Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan stopped what he was doing and met her gaze. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know one thing. If we don't try, we'll never forgive ourselves." Rachel nodded, turning back to her work. Outside, the world continued to argue and despair, but in the dim light of the lab, hope still burned. For now, that was enough. Rachel and Ethan gathered their small team in the underground lab. The air was tense, filled with the hum of machines and the faint smell of burnt wires. They knew they couldn't wait any longer. The Council's envoys were already on their way to enforce the restrictions, and if the rift wasn't ready by then, all hope would be lost. "This is it," Rachel said, standing in front of the group. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she held a tablet displaying the plans for the rift. "If we don't act now, humanity will have no future. We've worked too hard to give up." Ethan stepped forward, his face serious but determined. "We're not just doing this for ourselves," he added. "We're doing it for everyone. Our families, our friends, Everyone back on Earth who deserves a second chance. The team nodded, their faces reflecting a mix of fear and resolve. Among them was Lily, the young pilot who had become an essential part of the project. She spoke up, her voice clear and confident. "Tell us what we need to do. We'll make it happen." Rachel explained the plan again, breaking it down into simple steps. The rift required an enormous amount of energy, more than they could generate from Earth's remaining resources. To solve this, they had scavenged parts from old satellites, derelict space stations, and abandoned alien technology. These components were pieced together into a makeshift power core, unstable but functional. For now, the hardest part isn't building the rift, Rachel continued. It's keeping it stable long enough for the ships to pass through. If it collapses too soon, we risk losing everything, including the people trying to escape. Lily raised her hand. "What about timing? How do we know when to activate it?" "We'll have to coordinate carefully," Ethan replied. "Once the rift is open, every ship needs to move quickly. There won't be room for mistakes." As the team divided into smaller groups to handle different tasks, tensions began to rise outside the lab. Marcus, the politician who opposed their plan, had gained more supporters. His speeches painted Rachel and Ethan as reckless dreamers willing to gamble humanity's future on an untested idea. His words struck a chord with many who were scared and desperate, and protests erupted near the lab's hidden entrance. One evening, as Rachel and Ethan reviewed the final calculations, they heard shouting from above. Someone had discovered their location. "We don't have much time," Ethan said, glancing at the ceiling. "If Marcus's people find us, they'll try to stop us, or worse, sabotage the rift." Rachel clenched her fists. "Then we can't wait any longer. We'll activate the rift tonight, even if it's not perfect." The team worked through the night, their movements quick and precise. Lily flew one last mission to retrieve a critical component, narrowly avoiding detection by council envoys patrolling nearby space. By dawn, the rift generator was ready, or as ready as it could be. Rachel stood by the control panel, her fingers hovering over the activation switch. "This is it," she whispered. "No turning back." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "We've done everything we can. Trust the plan." With a deep breath, Rachel pressed the button. The machine roared to life, its energy crackling through the air. A shimmering portal appeared, swirling with colors that seemed to shift and dance. It was beautiful, but also terrifying. The ground shook, and alarms blared as the unstable rift began to tear through the atmosphere. Outside, chaos erupted. The sky lit up with strange lights, and panic spread among the crowds. People screamed and ran, unsure of what was happening. Back in the lab, Rachel and Ethan exchanged a glance. They had known this moment would come, but seeing the destruction firsthand was harder than they'd imagined. "We did this," Rachel said, her voice trembling. "All those people." Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her focus back. "We didn't have a choice. This is the only way." Lily burst into the room, her face pale but determined. "The first ships are ready to go. We need to get them through now." Rachel nodded, pushing aside her guilt. "Let's move. Humanity's future depends on us." As the first Ark ships approached the rift, Rachel and Ethan stayed behind, guiding each vessel through the unstable portal. They didn't know what awaited humanity on the other side, but they knew one thing for certain. There was no going back. The first Ark ship passed through the shimmering rift, disappearing into the swirling colors of the unstable portal. Rachel and Ethan watched anxiously from the control room, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors. Each passing second felt like an eternity as they waited for confirmation that the ship had made it safely to the other side. "It's through," Lily announced, her voice cracking with relief as she read the data streaming in from the ship. "They're on the other side." Rachel let out a shaky breath, gripping the edge of the console. One down, hundreds more to go. But the celebration was short-lived. The rift was growing increasingly unstable, its energy surging unpredictably. Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed across the screens. Ethan frantically adjusted settings, trying to stabilize the portal. "We don't have much time," he muttered. "If this thing collapses now, we'll lose everyone still waiting." Outside, the chaos worsened. The unstable rift tore through Earth's atmosphere, causing violent storms and earthquakes. Buildings crumbled, fires raged, and thousands fled in terror. Back in the lab, the team worked tirelessly, guiding each ship through the portal as quickly as possible. Every delay meant more lives lost. Lily ran back and forth between the control room and the hangar, coordinating with the pilots. Her voice was calm but urgent over the comms. "Ship 7, you're clear to approach. Hold your position until the signal." Despite the danger, the operation moved forward. Ship after ship entered the rift, carrying families, scientists, engineers, and supplies needed to start anew. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Rachel and Ethan, who stayed at their posts, refusing to leave until every vessel was through. As the hours dragged on, betrayal struck. Marcus, the politician who had opposed the plan, revealed the existence of the project to the Galactic Council. He believed humanity should face its punishment rather than flee, and he saw this as his chance to stop what he called a reckless escape. Council envoys arrived sooner than expected, descending upon Earth with advanced ships and weapons. "They're here," Ethan said, his voice tight with panic as he spotted the Council fleet on the monitors. "If they find us, they'll shut this down." Rachel's mind raced. She knew they couldn't wait any longer. "Activate the emergency protocol," she ordered. "Send the signal to all remaining ships. They need to move now, no matter what." Ethan hesitated. What about the ones not ready? What about the people still on the ground? "We can't save everyone," Rachel said, her voice breaking. "But we can save those who are already in the air. We have to." The emergency signal went out, and the remaining ships surged toward the rift. Some made it through just in time, while others were caught in the Council's blockade. Explosions lit up the sky as Council ships fired on the Ark vessels, determined to stop humanity's exodus. In the lab, the team prepared for the final phase. Rachel and Ethan would stay behind to ensure the last ship got through before shutting down the generator. It was a dangerous task, but someone had to do it. Lily appeared at the door, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "You don't have to stay," she said, looking at Rachel and Ethan. "Come with me. There's still room on the last ship." Rachel shook her head. "Someone has to make sure this works. If we leave now, everything falls apart." Ethan nodded, standing beside her. "We started this. We'll finish it." Lily hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't argue. She knew they were right. With one last glance, she turned and ran toward the hangar, boarding the final ship. As the last Ark vessel approached the rift, Rachel and Ethan held their ground. The Council envoys were closing in, their ships descending rapidly. The ground shook violently as the rift began to collapse, its energy spiraling out of control. "Go," Rachel shouted into the comms. "Now." The last ship disappeared into the portal just as the Council forces reached the lab. Rachel and Ethan exchanged one final look, their faces filled with a mix of pride and sorrow. They had done what they could. Humanity had a chance, a fragile, uncertain chance, but a chance nonetheless. The rift collapsed with a deafening roar, swallowing the lab and everything around it. When the dust settled, Earth lay silent, scared but beginning its long journey toward healing. And somewhere far away, in a new galaxy, humanity took its first steps toward a second chance. On the other side of the rift, humanity emerged into a galaxy unlike anything they had ever seen. The stars burned brighter here, their light casting a warm glow over strange new worlds, planets of every color, some covered in deep blue oceans, others with forests that shimmered like gold, orbited suns that seemed to pulse with life. It was beautiful, but also daunting. This was a fresh start, but it came with challenges no one could have fully prepared for. The first few days were chaotic. The Ark ships, scattered across space by the unstable rift, struggled to regroup. Communication systems flickered, and many ships had been damaged during the crossing. Supplies were running low, and tensions flared as people argued over what to do next. Some wanted to settle on the nearest planet, while others insisted on searching for something better. Lily, now one of the key figures among the survivors, worked tirelessly to bring order to the chaos. Her calm voice and quick thinking earned her respect from the crew of her ship and beyond. She organized search parties to locate missing vessels and coordinated efforts to repair damaged systems. "We've come too far to fall apart now," she told anyone who would listen. "We have to stick together." Despite her optimism, the reality of their situation weighed heavily on everyone. Resources were scarce, and the technology they had brought with them was already showing signs of wear. Many of the tools and machines designed to help them adapt to alien environments had malfunctioned during the journey. Without them, survival would be much harder than anyone had anticipated. One day, Lily led a small team to explore a nearby planet. Its surface was covered in dense green forests and clear rivers, and the air was breathable. At first glance, it seemed perfect. But as they ventured deeper, they discovered strange plants that emitted a faint, eerie glow. When touched, these plants released clouds of spores that made the team dizzy and disoriented. "This place isn't safe," Lily said, pulling her team back toward their shuttle. "We need to keep looking." Back on the main ship, debates continued about where to settle. Some argued that any planet was better than drifting aimlessly through space, while others insisted they should find somewhere truly habitable. Morale plummeted as hope began to fade. It wasn't just the physical challenges that tested them. Emotions ran high as people grappled with the enormity of what they had done. They had left Earth behind, abandoned their home, their history, everything they had ever known. For some, the guilt was overwhelming. Others felt anger, blaming Rachel and Ethan for forcing them into this uncertain future. Amidst the struggles, stories of Earth began to take on a mythical quality. Parents told their children about the blue skies and vast oceans they had once called home. They spoke of towering cities and endless fields, painting pictures of a world that seemed almost too perfect to be real. These tales became a way to hold onto their identity, to remind themselves of who they were and where they had come from. Lily found herself drawn to these stories. She often sat with the older members of the group, listening as they shared memories of Earth. One night, an elderly man named George pulled out a small weathered photograph. It showed a family standing in front of a house surrounded by trees. "This was my home," he said softly. "I don't know if I'll ever see anything like it again." Lily placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll build something new," she said. "It won't be the same, but it can still be good. We just have to keep going." Slowly, humanity began to adapt. Teams worked together to modify their equipment, finding creative ways to make it function despite the damage. Scouts explored more planets, eventually discovering one that seemed promising, a rocky world with fertile soil and a stable climate. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to give them hope. As the first settlements took shape, people began to dream again. They planted crops, built shelters, and mapped their new surroundings. Children played under alien skies, laughing and imagining adventures. Life was hard, but it was also full of possibility. In quiet moments, Lily thought about Rachel and Ethan, wondering if they had known what awaited humanity on the other side of the rift. She hoped they were proud of what they had done. Whatever mistakes had been made, whatever sacrifices had been required, they had given humanity a second chance. And for now, that was enough. Generations passed, and humanity began to thrive in their new galaxy. The rocky planet they had chosen as their home became a bustling hub of activity. Cities rose from the ground, built with a mix of Earth's old designs and new materials found on this alien world. People learned to live sustainably, using resources wisely and respecting the environment around them. It wasn't easy, but they adapted, finding ways to balance survival with progress. Lily, once a young pilot full of fire and determination, grew older but never lost her spark. She became a leader, guiding her people with wisdom gained from years of hardship. Her stories of the journey through the rift and the struggles that followed inspired others to keep pushing forward. "We didn't come this far to give up now," she often said. "Every challenge is just another step towards something better." The settlers worked hard to build a new society. They planted crops that could grow in the planet's soil, designed machines to harvest energy from the sun, and even began to study the strange plants and animals native to their new home. Over time, they discovered how to use these alien species for food, medicine, and building materials. Life was still difficult, but it was also rewarding. For the first time in decades, there was hope. As the years went by, humanity's presence in the galaxy expanded. Explorers ventured out into space, searching for other planets to settle. They encountered alien species, some friendly, others cautious, but always approached with respect and curiosity. Slowly, alliances were formed and trade routes were established. Humanity began to carve out a place for itself among the stars. Despite their progress, memories of Earth lingered like shadows. The tales of the blue planet were passed down from generation to generation, becoming part of the settlers' shared history. Parents told their children about the mistakes that had led to their exodus, the pollution, the greed, the disregard for nature, and warned them not to repeat those errors. Earth became both a cautionary tale and a source of pride, a reminder of where they had come from and how far they had come. One evening, Lily sat by a campfire with a group of children gathered around her. The flames danced in the cool night air, casting flickering light on their eager faces. "Tell us about Rachel and Ethan," one boy asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Lily smiled, leaning back against a log. "Rachel and Ethan were scientists," she began. "They worked day and night to create the rift that brought us here. They knew it was dangerous, but they believed it was the only way to save humanity. When the council tried to stop them, they didn't give up. They stayed behind to make sure everyone else got through safely." "Did they survive?" a girl asked quietly. Lily shook her head. "I don't think so. But what they did gave us a chance to start over, to do things right this time." She paused, looking up at the unfamiliar constellations above. "We owe them everything." The children listened intently, their imaginations sparked by the story. To them, Rachel and Ethan were heroes, figures of legend who had sacrificed everything for the greater good. Their names were spoken with reverence, a symbol of hope and resilience. As the years turned into centuries, humanity's new society flourished. They built schools, libraries, and museums dedicated to preserving their history. Artifacts from Earth, photographs, tools, even pieces of old technology were displayed alongside artifacts from their new home, creating a bridge between the past and the present. The phrase, "too late to mend it," became a solemn reminder of the cost of hubris, etched into plaques and monuments across the galaxy. But humanity wasn't content to simply survive. They dreamed of exploring further, of reaching even more distant stars. New ships were built, faster and more advanced than the ark vessels that had carried them through the rift. Pilots trained rigorously, eager to follow in Lily's footsteps and chart unknown territories. Through it all, the spirit of determination remained. The settlers' centuries had passed since humanity left Earth, and their new home in the galaxy had become a thriving center of life. The settlers had built cities that blended technology with nature, creating spaces where humans and alien species could coexist peacefully. Forests grew alongside towering structures, and rivers flowed through streets lined with glowing lights. It was a world unlike anything they had known before, but it carried echoes of the past. The stories of Earth were still told around campfires, in classrooms, and during festivals. Children learned about the blue planet, its vast oceans and sprawling cities, and the mistakes that had forced humanity to leave. They heard tales of Rachel and Ethan, whose bravery had opened the door to a new future. These stories became legends, shaping the identity of a people who were learning to live differently. One day, an old historian named Anna stood before a group of students in a museum filled with artifacts from Earth. She held up a small rusted keychain, a relic from the old world, and smiled. "This belonged to someone on the first Ark ship," she said. "It might seem like just a piece of metal, but it's more than that. It's a reminder of where we came from and how far we've come." The students listened intently, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity and pride. For them, Earth was both a distant memory and a guiding light. Its lessons were etched into their society, influencing the way they treated each other and the world around them. They had learned to value balance, to respect the limits of their resources, and to work together for the common good. But not everything was perfect. Challenges still arose, as they always would. New planets brought unfamiliar dangers, storms that could level buildings, creatures that tested their defenses, and diseases that required quick thinking to contain. Yet with each obstacle, humanity grew stronger. They adapted. Back in the original galaxy, the Galactic Council gathered once more in their grand assembly hall. The chamber was quiet, the air thick with thought. Zorath, the ancient leader who had delivered humanity's verdict so long ago, sat silently at the center. His eyes were fixed on a holographic projection of Earth, now slowly healing after centuries of neglect. Forests were regrowing, oceans were clearing, and the scars left by humanity were fading. "It is strange," Zorath said finally, breaking the silence. "We sought to preserve balance, yet I wonder if we stifled potential instead."